The alarms had been screaming for 6 minutes straight. That alone told the human everything he needed to know. Alien evacuation protocols never allowed alarms to run that long. Either the threat had been misclassified, or command was already dead. The palace corridor shook as something heavy struck the outer walls again. Lights flickered from royal blue to emergency crimson. Smoke curled along the ceiling, carrying the sharp, metallic scent of burning shields. The human, Lieutenant Aaron Hale, stood still while everyone else ran. Alien guards sprinted past him, four-limbed and armored, their faces tight with panic. Courtiers scattered, robes torn, voices shrill and breaking. No one looked back. Then the floor buckled. A shockwave slammed through the hall, hurling bodies against the walls. Aaron barely kept his footing. When he looked up, the blast doors at the far end had partially collapsed, twisted inward like crushed foil. And beneath them, the princess lay trapped. She wasn't human. Tall, slender, skin like polished stone threaded with faint bioluminescent veins. Royal insignia burned softly at her collar, proof that she was not just important. She was irreplaceable. Her guards were dead. Not fallen, destroyed. Armor torn open. Weapons melted into slag. Whatever was coming through that breach hadn't slowed down. Aaron's comm crackled in his ear. All non-essential personnel evacuate immediately. Repeat, do not engage. He ripped the comm out. The floor trembled again. From the darkness beyond the broken doors came a sound like grinding rock and wet breath. Shadows shifted, too large, too wrong. The princess tried to push herself free. The metal pinned her legs. She looked up and saw him. For half a second, her eyes held relief. Then fear. Because humans were fragile. Everyone knew that. Soft bodies. Breakable limbs. A species good for diplomacy and logistics, not last stands. Run, she said, her voice tight but steady. Even now, even here, she was thinking like royalty. You must survive. Aaron didn't answer. He moved. The heat was unbearable near the breach. Emergency turrets along the ceiling fired in wild bursts, their bolts barely slowing the massive shape forcing its way inside. One clawed limb punched through the wreckage, ripping away another meter of reinforced alloy like paper. Aaron grabbed the fallen beam pinning the princess. His muscles screamed. It didn't budge. Another impact rocked the corridor. A section of ceiling collapsed behind him, cutting off the last clear escape route. Anyone still alive was gone now. Just him. And her. Lieutenant, the princess said, softer now. Please. Aaron set his feet. He thought of Earth. Of gravity that crushed bones until bodies adapted or broke. Of storms, wars, collapsing cities. Of growing up knowing no one was coming to save you. The beam shifted, just a little. That was when the creature broke through. It wasn't a beast the galaxy had a name for. All teeth and armored hide, eyes glowing like furnace cores. It filled the corridor, its presence smothering sound itself. It lunged. Aaron didn't think. He turned, stepping between it and the princess, arms outstretched on instinct, like he could stop it by will alone. The impact was catastrophic. Pain exploded through him, white-hot and absolute. He felt his arms shatter, felt himself lifted off the ground, slammed back into the wall. There was a wet sound he didn't recognize at first. Then numbness. He hit the floor hard, vision blurring. Somewhere behind him, the beam finally gave way. The princess screamed his name. He didn't remember telling her. The creature reared back for the killing blow. And royal cannons fired. The corridor vanished in light. The last thing Aaron saw before darkness took him was the princess crawling toward him, hands glowing with biolight, her face streaked with tears and disbelief. A human. Broken. Bleeding. Still alive. And unwilling to let go. The first problem was that the human's heart was still beating. The second was that it shouldn't have been. Medical drones hovered in a tight ring around the regeneration chamber, projecting translucent readouts that scrolled faster with every passing second. Red warnings stacked on top of red warnings until the displays began auto-suppressing them to prevent system overload. Both arms severed at the shoulder, one physician said quietly. Massive neural trauma. Blood loss beyond survivable parameters. Another adjusted the scanner, mandibles twitching in agitation. Secondary shock alone should have stopped cardiac function. Yet it hasn't slowed. The chamber pulsed softly, filled with pale blue healing light. Inside, Lieutenant Aaron Hale lay suspended in the regeneration fluid, head tilted slightly to one side, chest rising and falling with stubborn regularity. Alive. Princess Valera stood just beyond the transparent barrier, hands clasped so tightly her fingers glowed. "He stepped between me and the creature," she said. Her voice didn't shake, but only because she refused to let it. He had no armor. No enhanced frame. Nothing. No one answered. The physicians had all seen the security footage. They had replayed it twice. A human, classified across the galaxy as physically vulnerable, had interposed himself against a royal-class threat without hesitation. That alone made no sense. The chamber chimed softly. New data appeared. Then froze. "That's not possible," one healer said. Vilira leaned forward. "What is it?" The physician hesitated. "The regeneration field is adapting." "That is its function," another said. "No," the first replied. "It is changing." The chamber's internal light shifted hue, blue bleeding into deep amber, then something darker, richer. The fluid thickened, swirling not in programmed currents, but in slow, deliberate spirals around the human's shoulders. The stumps where his arms had been did not cauterize. They did not scar. They waited. Princess Vilira felt a pressure in the air, subtle but undeniable. Like standing near a storm that had not yet decided to break. "Shut it down," one of the physicians said suddenly. "Now." "I can't," another replied, fingers flying over the console. "The system has overridden manual control. That requires royal authorization." "I know." All eyes turned to Vilira. She stared at the human floating inside the chamber. His face was calm in unconsciousness, brow relaxed, as if his body had decided something his mind had not yet been informed of. "He saved my life," she said. "Do not touch the system." The chamber hummed, lower now. Deeper. Energy readings spiked, then stabilized at levels no medical device had ever recorded outside of weaponized reactors or forbidden relics. One of the older healers stepped back slowly. "I have seen these signatures before," he said. The room went still. "In archives," he continued. "In sealed historical records. Species myths, dismissed as allegory." Vilira turned. "Speak." The healer swallowed. "There were once beings whose biology did not separate flesh from legacy. Whose bodies responded not to genetics alone, but to choice." The chamber pulsed again. Aaron's fingers twitched. Every sensor screamed at once. "Neural activity increasing," a technician said. "But it's not pain response, it's alignment." "What does that mean?" Vilira demanded. "It means," the healer said softly, "that his body is not healing randomly. It is answering something." The fluid around Aaron's shoulders darkened further, threads of black and gold weaving through it like living veins. Beneath the surface, shapes began to form, too structured to be scar tissue, too deliberate to be prosthetics. Claws scraped faintly against the inside of the chamber. The sound was quiet. But it echoed. Several physicians backed away instinctively. "Princess," one whispered. "If this continues." She didn't look at him. "Then let it continue." Aaron's heartbeat remained steady. Strong. As if death had come close enough to be recognized. And turned away. Pain pulled him back first. Not sharp. Not sudden. It was deep, grinding, structural, like something was being rebuilt the wrong way and refusing to ask permission. Aaron tried to breathe. The air felt thick. Heavy. Liquid. His eyes snapped open. Blue light surrounded him, rippling with every movement of his chest. For a heartbeat, confusion won out over panic. A tank. Medical fluid. A regeneration chamber. I lived. The thought barely finished forming before memory crashed into him. The corridor. The creature. The princess screaming his name. His arms. He tried to move them. Agony tore through his shoulders, white-hot and absolute, stealing the air from his lungs. He screamed, but the sound came out distorted, muffled by the fluid around him. The chamber reacted instantly. Light flared. Energy surged. The fluid around his shoulders darkened, swirling faster, tighter, as if responding to his pain rather than soothing it. Aaron clenched his jaw, heart hammering. "They're gone," he thought. "They're really gone." Something shifted. Pressure built where emptiness should have been. Not phantom pain, this was real. Dense. Heavy. Like muscles flexing for the first time after years of sleep. He looked down. At first, he didn't understand what he was seeing. Black shapes emerged from the swirling fluid, glossy and segmented, reflecting the chamber's light in hard, angular lines. They were too large, tapering where human arms should have narrowed. His breath caught. The shapes moved. Jointed sections unfolded with a low, resonant sound, not mechanical, not organic as he knew it. Claws extended slowly, each one curved, wickedly sharp, etched with faint golden veins that pulsed in time with his heartbeat. Dragon claws. The word didn't feel dramatic. It felt obvious. The chamber alarms erupted, then cut off mid-scream, as if something had overridden them entirely. The fluid drained rapidly, releasing him onto the chamber's surface as the barrier slid open with a hiss of escaping energy. Aaron collapsed forward onto his knees. The floor cracked. He stared at his hands, not hands, as they pressed into the reinforced alloy. The metal warped slightly under their weight, claw tips sinking in without effort. "No," he whispered. "No, no, this isn't." His voice echoed strangely, deeper than he remembered. He lifted one arm experimentally. The limb responded instantly, smoothly, with a strength that made his stomach drop. Every movement felt right, balanced, controlled, natural in a way prosthetics or grafts never could. Fear finally caught up to him. He scrambled backward, claws scraping sparks from the floor, breath coming fast and shallow. Medical staff shouted from beyond the chamber, their voices overlapping in panic and awe. Containment breach. Energy levels stabilizing. By the stars, it's real. Lieutenant Hale. Her voice cut through everything. Aaron looked up. Princess Valera stood just beyond the chamber's edge, guards frozen behind her, weapons lowered without conscious decision. Her bioluminescent markings glowed brighter than before, not with fear, but recognition. "I need you to breathe," she said gently. "You are safe." He laughed once, sharp and disbelieving. "Safe." He held up one clawed arm, the talons catching the light. "I don't even know what I am anymore." Valera stepped closer. Every instinct in the room screamed for her to stop. She didn't. "You are the man who chose to stand between me and death," she said. "Whatever else this is, it does not change that." Aaron looked at his claws again. They trembled. Not with rage. Not with hunger. With restraint. He realized, distantly, that despite their size, despite their obvious lethality, he was holding them carefully, angled away from everyone in the room. Protective. Something ancient stirred beneath his skin, a presence that felt less like a voice and more like a memory returning home. Not power for conquest. Power for guardianship. The chamber lights dimmed, settling into a low, steady glow. The galaxy had just witnessed something it believed impossible. A dragon had not been created. A promise had been remembered. The chamber was sealed within the hour. Not to contain Aaron, but to contain knowledge. Emergency black channels lit up across the palace as historians, xenobiologists, and archivists were summoned from systems away. Records long classified as ceremonial myth were unlocked under royal override, their warnings ignored for centuries. Aaron sat alone at the center of it all. He was wrapped in a stabilizing cloak designed for energy-dense species, though it barely concealed the claws resting calmly on his knees. He kept them still, careful, aware that every movement was being watched. They weren't afraid of him yet. They were afraid of what he meant. Princess Valera stood at the head of the council table as holograms filled the air, star maps, ancient murals, half-decayed data tablets reconstructed by modern processors. "These are the earliest interstellar records," an archivist said, his voice reverent despite himself. "From before the consolidation. Before the first galactic charter." The images shifted. A spiral arm burned with symbols, vast winged silhouettes coiled around human figures so small they should have been insignificant. They called them exaggerations, another scholar added. Primitive attempts to explain lost megafauna. We classified them as metaphor. The hologram zoomed in. The wings folded. The dragons knelt. Aaron's breath caught. "They weren't rulers," Valera said quietly. "They were bound." Murmurs rippled through the chamber. "Bound to whom?" a counselor asked. "To humans," the archivist replied. "Specifically, humans who demonstrated a singular behavioral trait." The display shifted again. A human standing between fire and a child. A human holding a collapsing structure long enough for others to escape. A human bleeding out in vacuum while sealing a breach from the outside. Sacrifice. Not aggression. Not dominance. "They were not created," the archivist continued. "They answered." The room went silent. Valera turned toward Aaron. "Your species was never chosen for its strength," she said. "You were chosen because you endure loss, and still choose others." Aaron looked down at his claws. "They took my arms," he said slowly. "So this is some kind of reward." The archivist shook his head. No. It is a continuation. He enlarged a final record, fragmented, barely preserved. When humans were driven from the stars, the dragons withdrew. Not in rage. Not in defeat. In waiting. Humanity was declared a non-essential species after the collapse wars, Valeera said. Your worlds were isolated. Your expansion halted. The galaxy believed it had contained you. Her eyes hardened. It was wrong. Aaron felt it then, the pull. Not toward violence. Toward vigilance. As if something vast and patient had opened one eye again. They feared dragons, a counselor whispered. So they erased humans from the equation. They feared what dragons protected, the archivist corrected. Silence pressed down on the chamber like gravity. Across the galaxy, hidden senses began to stir. Relics long dismissed as inert ticked back to life. Ancient structures aligned themselves subtly toward human space. Aaron stood. The floor did not crack this time. They don't need to fear me, he said. I didn't ask for this. Valeera met his gaze without flinching. No, she said. But the galaxy will fear the question your existence forces them to answer. What question? She smiled, just a little. What happens when humans decide they are worth protecting again? Far beyond the palace walls, something ancient stretched its wings in the dark between stars. Not to conquer, but to remember its oath. They gave him a weapon. He didn't take it. The ceremonial blade hovered in the air between them, forged from star metal and etched with royal glyphs meant for champions and executioners alike. Any other species would have accepted it without hesitation. Aaron looked at it once. Then shook his head. I don't need another way to hurt people, he said. The chamber was silent except for the low hum of the palace shields. Outside, fleets repositioned. Borders recalculated. News feeds across 1,000 systems struggled to decide whether to panic or deny reality. Princess Valeera dismissed the blade with a gesture. I suspected you'd say that, she replied. She stepped down from the dais and stood before him, close enough that any sudden movement could have been fatal. Her guard stiffened. Aaron didn't move. His claws rested at his sides, relaxed, talons curved inward, deliberately non-threatening. The effort of restraint was visible now, not because it was difficult, but because it was chosen. You could claim sanctuary, Valeera said. Power. Status. Protection. He met her eyes. I already chose, he said. Back in that corridor. Something passed through the room then, not fear, not awe. Understanding. The princess knelt. Not in submission. In recognition. Every guard followed suit, armor clinking softly as they lowered themselves to one knee. Across the palace, the gesture echoed as command staff, advisors, and even visiting envoys mirrored the motion without fully knowing why. Aaron felt the weight of it press against his chest. Please don't, he said quietly. Valeera looked up at him. You stood so I could live, she said. Allow us to stand so the galaxy may remember what that means. Word spread faster than any official transmission. Not of a dragon. Of a human who refused to rule. Empires delayed aggressions. Border fleets hesitated. Ancient enemies reconsidered old assumptions written into law and doctrine. Because power that seeks a throne can be negotiated with. Power that refuses one cannot. Aaron returned to human space within the week. No escort. No declaration. Just a single vessel crossing the dark. But he was not alone. Where he walked, systems noticed quiet changes. Piracy routes shifted away. Slaver operations collapsed under unexplained interference. Threats dissolved before ever reaching the worlds they had targeted. No firestorms. No proclamations. Just prevention. On the edge of a small human colony, a child once asked him if he was a monster. Aaron knelt so his shadow wouldn't fall over her. No, he said, carefully flexing one claw so she could see the control in it. I'm just someone who doesn't like seeing people get hurt. She smiled. Far beyond known space, ancient sentinels settled back into watchful silence. Not because the galaxy was safe, but because it was being watched. Final realization spread slowly, reluctantly, impossibly. Humans were never dangerous because of what they built. They were dangerous because when something was worth protecting, they did not step aside. And now, neither did the dragons.